if it's a parent having this conversation with the child, like you talked about the thinking father with the relational, type of son, suck it up, grow up, stop crying, stop your sniveling, that type of stuff. It creates these scars on them that they can carry further in life, and then it's misplaced when somebody else would treat them in a similar fashion.
Welcome to the Developing Great Relationships podcast, where we are having conversations to help you understand God's design for great relationships and how to develop the habits needed to achieve it. Now here is your host, Joshua Verwers.
Joshua Verwers back here once again, and apparently so are you. This is the Developing Great Relationships podcast, and I am so happy that you are joining us here today. We're picking up our conversation from last week about thinking and feeling, those two mental processes that we find in the 16 personality types. Today, we're going to continue this conversation about the logical and relational components. Myself and Dr. Mark Majors are picking up our conversation right now.
In talking about jobs recently, heard somebody say that their boss came in the morning and asked if they was okay, and then in the evening asked if they were okay. But during the day, I just left them alone. Introverts are just working fine, a logical person, having a great time, enjoying that. But if they were to squeak, have a problem, a squeaky wheel.
Right.
Then the boss would know to come to them.
Yeah.
So unless I say something, I'm okay. Unless I squeak, you don't have to oil my wheel.
Yeah.
And people need to recognize that when they're working with somebody like that, it's just wonderful. You don't have to make it some kind of personal thing that, oh, you're not emotional and gushy with me. I must be doing something wrong.
Right.
It's not that at all. It's just, this person needs their space, needs quiet, check with them when you think there might be an issue or they're squeaking, certainly be there. But other than that, my God, you have a great employee.
Yeah.
Not going to bother you and not going to drain your energy bank.
Right. Some of this can be difficult because of terms that we use. And I think like right at the beginning of the conversation, we briefly touched on some of those terms where often a thinking husband, the wife will say, you're harsh or
cold. Yeah,
cold. You have no emotion. You don't have a feeling bone in your body.
Yeah. I married Spock.
Right. Yeah. These type of things that when those are hurled at you, they hurt.
Owie.
Yeah, they hurt. And then the same can be tossed from the thinking husband to the feeling wife.
Sure.
Of you can't think.
Yeah, you're getting at that. One of the things I say all the time. Wives demand that their husbands be woman enough for them.
Yeah.
Why aren't you an emotional woman? Can't you be an emotional woman just once for me? No.
Yeah. Hey, doctor, could you fix him so he would feel more? Yeah.
No, I'm not that kind of doctor.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't work.
I don't do surgery.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the truth is, men want their wives to just suck it up, be logical, take care of it.
Right.
And it's a brutal thing emotionally. Either way it goes, male, female, female, male. TF, FT, it doesn't make any difference. Talking to that individual as if there's something wrong with them. The woman who's a T and has a tough time in middle school and then gets married and the husband says, you're cold. Well, that's such an abomination to a woman who's nurturing. They're not cold.
Right.
They're not cold at all. They're very compassionate, warm people.
Yeah. And the stuff that happens with these conversations, especially growing up, if it's a parent having this conversation with the child, like you talked about the thinking father with the relational, type of son, suck it up, grow up, stop crying, stop your sniveling, that type of stuff. It creates these scars on them that they can carry further in life, and then it's misplaced when somebody else would treat them in a similar fashion. I think about how that can happen, and I get in trouble with this sometimes where, and as you had mentioned, if I have a problem, I'm going to tell you I have a problem. I'm not CNN. You're not getting constant weather updates of what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling. If there's an issue, I will bring up the issue. And if there's not, no news is good news. And that's kind of how I've always kind of operated in that regard with my family too. So I've got a brother that lives in South Carolina. I've got a dad that lives, a couple hours away from me. And even with those two men, we don't talk all the time. And when we talk, we're not upset. It's not like, oh, I haven't talked to you in, 2 months, so you must not love me anymore. It's kind of like that example of, if it changes, I'll let you know if I have a problem with you. But I quickly realized that doesn't work for every people or for every person, because there are other people that if I give them that space, they see the space as being neglect because I'm not relating to them on a regular basis. How do we deal with these things? I mean, yes, it's trying to, set ourselves aside, to take up our cross daily, to serve one another, to, go all out for other people. But how do we do that? I mean, I know it's making that choice, but how?
What does the Bible say? It's the commands of Christ and the life of Christ being in the middle, with T and F, that lead us in the right direction. It's not what we have done, it's what we should do. Being compassionate, and yet, being very able to make good logical decisions. As men, we're responsible. And, so all of us do have a fair amount of logic within us. Even me, who's relational, I function with quite a bit of logic. I think that's kind of a normal thing. We have to be responsible for things, and sometimes we have to set ourselves and others aside to do what's expedient, what's necessary. But most of the time, we need to care for others, love them compassionately. Tenderness, gentleness, When you read about Christ and you look at things, you know what to do.
Yeah.
What would Jesus do? It's just a click phrase that people use, but it's more than that, What are his commands? We're commanded in Philippians 4:9 to think on these things. And how we think, how a man thinks, is how he goes.
Yeah.
And so we're really told to use our logic, but at the same time be relational and care about people. I think that's very, very important. Yeah. We're warriors as men, so therefore we're ready to do battle with evil.
Right.
Defend our family and take care of things and stand up for what's right. But the compassionate warrior, is really careful.
Yeah.
We must look at the Word of God about our behavior. Christ being in the middle is just, such a wonderful example for us to follow. Peter was relational,
Yeah.
Oh Lord, it will never be that you'll go to the cross and be crucified. It will never be. Get thee behind me, Satan. Yeah. You have in mind the things of man, not the things of God. So a very relational plea to Christ, and turns around and logically slaps him down.
Well, and even Peter, is it in Galatians that it recounts that story of those of the circumcision, trying to bring them in and accommodate them when it came to those times.
Yeah.
Peter trying to kumbaya.
And Paul rebuked him to his face.
Paul rebuked him rather severely.
Yeah. Paul is very logical. His arguments in Romans are laid out as a logical Roman argument.
Yep.
There in Roman architecture, and so we need both. Both of them were loved by Christ. Both of them important. He didn't look at Paul and say, stop your logicalness, get relational. He accepted him the way he was. And Peter, he just accepted him exactly. He loved him. He was close to him.
Yeah.
Very relational.
Right.
And so they're incredibly important. Peter writes in relational terms. Mm-hmm. Loving relationships and harmony, family. 1 Peter 3.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so.
Husbands live in an understanding way with their wives.
Right.
Set aside all your logic and stop that, and care about them,
right.
And so he understands that, and he wants men to do that.
Yeah. Now, how does this play out with workplace stuff?
Unbelievably.
The logic and relation. I mean, because I couldn't imagine having I don't know. I guess I'm thinking a human resource professional. That would have to be one of the most difficult places because you've got to work with both the logic and the relation in both of that.
A story. I did an intervention with a company. It was a software company. And they contacted me to help them because they had lost 3 HR people in a row after a 65-year-old woman had retired. She was the HR person.
Okay.
Everyone had been used to coming to this woman and talking with her and getting her nurture, getting her relational harmony stuff. Yeah. She was wonderful, and they thought of her as mom, mm-hmm. All of them. No, these are all logical software programmers, developers, as logical as you get. So they hired somebody that looked just like them. They got nice, logical men in there, and they couldn't stand them.
Right.
They weren't relational. They weren't into dealing with their issues and their needs, and they fired them after 30 days.
Wow.
And they said, what do? I said, well, quit hiring people that look like you. They're terrible HR people in a company like yours.
Yeah.
So you want a grandma.
Yeah.
You want somebody that's going to care for you. So you need to look for somebody who's relational, who's older, who's able to spend time talking with you about your issues. Yeah. Who cares, not just interested in the outcome.
Now, as we talk about that, and you just mentioned somebody that's older, it gets me thinking about a lot of these personality types. And I may be jumping the gun on this a little bit, but is it easier for us the older we get? Because it seems like the more years I've got on it, the more I'm able to do some of those others, the more experience I've got.
If we appreciate our differences and appreciate what we don't have and desire it, you'll get better at it.
And if we don't, we're probably just the old crotchety guy.
Well, they can be just as happy and just as content, but they may be curmudgeonly.
Yeah, right. Curmudgeon, there you go.
Yeah, they may be rigid, and anything that's not up to par to their standards,
right.
They scuff and scruff and buff and walk away.
Yeah.
So.
Now, I know with this being kind of the decision aspect, I mean, we're talking the judgments, so we're talking on how we make decisions based on the information that we've received. I want us to start to talk about that a little bit more and dive into that, but I think we need to maybe look at the judgment and perception a little bit. So how about we pick that up in the next episode?
Okay.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I hope you enjoyed looking at personality types and how that can really affect us in all of our relationships. If you did enjoy this episode, I would just encourage that you could share this with your friends, with your family, by using the social media links below. And until next time, we will just see you on the episode so we can all develop great relationships.